Hello and welcome to a new episode of Dinis Guarda, Cities ABC Open Business Council YouTube podcast series. Once again here with global thought leaders and with the people shifting and changing the world we're living in. There's a lot of stuff exciting happening. I know that if you see the news, probably see most the negative than the positive, but definitely I'm a very positive person, realistic but positive. And I think in our series, we've been really focused on portraying the authors, the change makers, and the people that are really changing the world and coming up with new solutions, new ideas, and new ways of improving and optimizing what we have. So today, welcome to our series. Someone actually I'm very excited to interview and profile, QuHarrison Terry. That is the author of the NFT Handbook, which is a book that I read in detail. And I've been quite excited because it touches a lot of things that are key for our time. And just a short note about the fantastic bio of QuHarrison Terry. So he's an author and digital global expert. That has been the growth marketeer at Mark Cuban Companies, a Dallas, Texas venture. And of course, everyone listening to our series know Mark Cuban. But QuHarrison is a very high profile digital and marketeer expert and author as well, that made it 4 times as LinkedIn top voices in tech for his contribution to digital marketing and technology. And this book, the NFT Handbook, which is going to be part of the focus of this interview, is a detailed guide on how to create, sell, and buy non-fungible tokens, NFTs, without the need of a technical background. And I think this is very important because at the moment there's so much myths and confusion about what are NFTs, but the interesting thing is that NFTs are a very important thing. So QuHarrison has been featured on CNN, Huffington Post, Economy, Cointelegraph, Movie Health News, and a lot of different platforms. TEDx, a speaker and moderator, and has been a global spokesman for companies like BMW and a lot of other big corporations and companies worldwide. So I'm particularly excited to welcome to our series, QuHarrison. Wonderful to have you here.
Yo, what up, Dinis? It's great to see you, man. It's been a long time.
Fantastic. No, I'm really excited about this. So I want to go directly to your background. So I always start by the basis. So you are, of course, over there in Dallas, which is very interesting Texan. I think probably I got from the Dallas series, who was my first childhood engagement with the city. But what I would be likely to understand is, okay, you have a fantastic body of work and career. Tell us a bit about your background. How do you come back into marketing, to digital, and become a global personality on this?
My background, I'm a technologist. I think at heart, always been a techie and a geek. Always been curious, and I think the thing that really got me into just this track where I think about emerging technologies was I used to really just be obsessed with the whole concept of like the future and what's coming in the future and where are we going and what does that look like, and being in that space led me to thinking about, okay, as an entrepreneur, you're usually inventing businesses or concepts for the future, but as a technologist, you can also look at what technology is going to have a massive impact on our lives. And so I started back in 2015 writing stuff on a blog about that. And here we are in 2021, almost 2022. And we're thinking about just how does the technologies that have manifested in front of us today have tremendous impacts on our lives. And when it came to writing a book, I didn't feel any hesitation when it came to the topic of NFTs, because it's like, look at how transformative they've just been to where we are right now. Like, I mean, there's a lot of people, whether you're as young as 12 years old or as old as 60 to 70 years old, dude, NFTs have made a life-changing impact. And we have story after story after story after story, whether you made money, whether it allows you to do something you've always wanted to do, whether it's it gave you a new form of expression, it extended a new way for you to communicate. Like the just the impact of this technology is just so vast that it's even hard for me to even comprehend just a tenth of it.
You're completely right. So before I go to the book, I am particularly excited as well about your fantastic profile in terms of marketing. And so can you tell us about how do you get into marketing? Because of course you have been working with some of the leading brands. You are of course working with Mark Cuban Group, which is of course one of the most, I think actually I'm a huge fan, not just because of what he achieved money-wise, but because he keeps on the top of the wave. So I'm sure that if working on a group like that, you have to know, but you work with brands like BMW. But how do you see digital marketing, and how do you come back to this? And I have a second question, but I want to first to see how do you arrive here as a marketeer, and how do you see the digital marketing as a whole?
Digital marketing. So I studied computer science back in university, and I didn't want to code or debug all day, right? Like I realized to be a really good programmer, you're sitting in front of a screen for a long time. And to me, I was a bit more social. I wanted to go out and I wanted to meet people and I wanted to collaborate in ways. And so I got a chance to, after university, get involved on the programming side of things, but more so APIs. And as most developers know, APIs are a way for coders to make their lives a little bit easier. So if you create an API, ideally, you need to market that API to different developers. And so I was familiar with the syntax and I was comfortable, speaking in the technical jargon. And I thought I could do so in a unique way. So that's what got me into marketing. I just started marketing APIs. I started at a company called Eat Street way back in 2014, 13, somewhere around there. And then did it all the way into, 2018 and did everything from the Eat Street stuff to Redox, which was a healthcare API, and we were working with um, data standards for interoperability here in the U.S. We have this whole crisis with like healthcare, and like a lot of it originates with how you get the data around a patient more easily accessible to providers, even, right? Because the providers, they can't really communicate between systems. And in some cases, even within the same health system, if they have different standards, the data isn't as easily transferred or transmitted. And so that's how I got into marketing. Marketing was not something where I woke up one day and said, "Hey, I'm going to be a marketer." I literally said, "Hey, I don't want to program, and I like tech. I like programming. I just don't want to do it as a full-time hobby." And I was like, "Oh, I could really do this marketing thing." And so I started just marketing constructs to developers, and that evolved, and it just has manifested into many things that a lot of people know me for today, whether it's the BMW campaigns or it's the stuff I do with Mark Cuban, or it's the things that we did at the agency. There's just a fun element of marketing where I think every time you start on a campaign, nothing else matters, right? Like a marketer is only as good as their last campaign. So it's a very hard profession in the sense that you can't, there's a compounding effect of knowledge. So there's this knowledge base that you gain from each activity, but that's the only thing that's transferred. Maybe you have a style, but even still that gets old because people will become accustomed to your style. So you really should be exploring styles and telling your story, or bringing awareness to your company or brand or service through the style. But you don't really want to marry a style per se, because then you have to go through the whole rebranding process. So there's a lot. We could do a whole dialogue on just marketing, but for me, marketing is what pays the bills.
I love that you're coming from a technology background, but then you are as well very conscious about marketing, very conscious about arts. And one of the things that reading about your profile that was quite I would say very interested on is that you are the co-founder of Inevitable Human, a
Yep.
futuristic media platform for the future thinkers. And as well, you are the co-founder of 23VIV, the world's
Vivi,
first
23 Vivi.
digital Vivi, yeah, the world's first digital art marketplace powered by blockchain. So can you tell us about these two organizations?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So Inevitable Human was a project that we started back in 2016 or 17. I forgot exactly when. But the whole concept was, I mean, when you really get into the weeds of like some of these technological constructs of like singularity, or just even transhumanism, right? Like there's these whole concept, there's a lot of fodder out there on like, this is what AI represents, or this is what, man machine relations represent. There's not a lot of people distilling that information and talking about it from a lens that I think resonates with the common person or the decision maker that's out there. And so what I wanted to do with Inevitable Human was create a concept where I simplified and distilled the whole concept of like, what is the singularity? Like, what is an AI controlled religion? Or what is an AI based day look like, where AI just programs your day? Like, yeah, people give you intent. Like, it's like Dinis and Q, we both just say, hey, we intend to talk to each other, right? At some point, but we both just tell our AIs to make it work. And we are blindly just at liberty to this AI. Like I'm spinning now, right? Like I'm freestyling a little bit, but this is a concept that me and you, it actually doesn't sound that bad. Honestly, if it said sign up, here's a beta for that, I would sign up. I'd be like, okay, cool. I trust the AI with my calendar. I mean, we trust AI with so many things. Like we trust AI with our maps. So when it comes to logistics, going from point B to point A, we trust it with money. We trusted with discoverability and intent when it comes to just what your information you're looking for, or what information you want to consume. And so when you start to say, okay, what if we let that bleed a little bit into our everyday lives? And we said, hey, Dinis, Q and Dinis want to have a conversation. My AI assistant or calendar will program and select it and automatically manage that. But then let's take it one step further, because that's not that far away. I think that could happen today if we wanted. Let's take it one step further. Let's say the AI knows based on our day how well we are going to be for that, how well prepared we'll be for that meeting. So it knows, have you been working on your Google Docs or your Microsoft Word docs that were the attachments assigned to that meeting? So did you put your updates in yet? Did you create the documents that you said you're going to draft yet? Did you have time, or has your heart rate been, elevated at such a crazy level where it thinks you're stressed out? And so what it says is, hey, I think you need to take a break and rest and reset. So I've reorganized and moved your meetings away. So here's this program, rest and reset. Try to relax. And we're going to meet with Dinis at a later point in time. We'll still meet with them this week. We'll still make it so it's best convenient. But like, we're getting to this world where that scenario that I just described to you, Dinis, I mean, you talk to me. It's something you'd see yourself using tomorrow, right?
No, and we're using this. You're right. We are already doing this partly.
So you're already doing this, right? But imagine you're just doing it on your side. Imagine if everybody, in the same way like an iMessage works. Like if I send you an iMessage and it's blue, and you send me one and it's gray or whatever, we're in the same thread. We're using the same hardware. We're on the same wavelength. When we start to think about AI and us all getting connected to the same wavelength, that's when this stuff gets really, really impressive and incredible, because now you're not just one singular node on the network. If you're doing it, you're just doing it on your end. But if everyone's doing it and we're all a part of that hive mentality, well then, damn, Dinis, like this becomes a really crazy life that we live in. And so the Inevitable Human project was a place where I would go and put some of these thought prompts there. And it was a paid resource. So we had a few thousand members on the platform, and it was a almost daily newsletter. And I would literally write out in detail the prompt that I just described daily. And I would find these concepts and these just interesting like ideas. I would find companies or innovators that were working on it, and I would I would lay it out. Let's say, hey, this is what I think. And so this one I just freestyled as an example, because we ended up sunsetting an Inevitable Human in 2019. It was towards the end of the year, and it's actually impeccable timing, because it was 2020 was coming up. We were trying to figure out where it landed. And I was doing my own growth marketing on that project. And what I couldn't get to catch is, I think it was way too complex, right? So I was distilling these complex things, and I was thinking I was bringing them down to, like, let's say the complexity was level 4. I thought I was bringing it down to level 1, and in reality, I was bringing it down to level 2. So I was getting like the thought leaders and the decision makers that I wanted, but I wasn't getting the masses. And I took those insights, and I was like, hey, like, this is a few thousand people paying us. It's great, but I don't want to like write a newsletter for the rest of my life. Like, it's a great living. We're making, good money, but the amount of the juice wasn't worth the squeeze. And so I came back and we sunsetted that. I ended up making a book. It was Inevitable Human Volume 1. I think I should still put out Volume 2 because that's written and it has some good stuff in there. But even Volume 1, like it's 2021, we wrote a lot of that stuff in 2016, 17, 18. A lot of those visions haven't even come true, right? Like that's the funny thing. We're starting to just see, my other project you mentioned, which is 23 Vivi, which is what I created in 2015. That was the world's first digital art marketplace powered by the blockchain. I started that in 2015. Ethereum didn't exist, so we were working off the Bitcoin blockchain. And as you know, Bitcoin, their blockchain is inherently slow, but it's very secure. And there were a lot of factors as to why I think 23 Vivi didn't work at the time. The biggest reason is I think there's a point in entrepreneurship where you should surround yourself with people that can think as futuristic as you. When I started a company in Wisconsin, I didn't surround myself with enough future thinkers where they could really see and understand at that time the world that we now live in with NFTs, where digital files that are scarce could be worth a lot of money. Or it could be worth value in general. Like value doesn't have to be correlated to money. Value can just mean that like I cherish this and it is something that I'm going to protect or care about. And so when I looked at it from that lens, I was just like, So to say that, I know I'm jumping around, but in 2015 we were thinking about 23 Vivi. In 2021. The things that we were thinking about would come true. So you can only get a glimpse of what we were thinking about in 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, and now 21 that was captured in some of those inevitable human dialogues that just haven't come to life yet. And so directionally, I think it was right. When I came to the NFT Handbook, the reason why it's even called the NFT Handbook is because I wanted to simplify it. I didn't want to be at level 4 anymore, right? NFTs, we can have a lot of level 4 conversations about the smart contracts and the values that live within them, but that doesn't reach that many people. It reaches the technologist that is working on it. It reaches to the entrepreneur that's thinking about building a business or finding the nuance and maybe there's a delta in which they can build for, but it doesn't really reach anybody, not the masses. And with that, I was like, okay, how do you take that level 4 conversation and bring it down to a level 1? Or even better, a level 0. I think level 0 is really hard, right? There's a Reddit thread, there's a subreddit. It's called "Explain It to Me Like I'm 5," and you see people every day just go and try to explain these very nuanced concepts through language that a 5-year-old would understand. And I think that is the true definition of one, understanding, but 2, communication. If you can communicate the same way with someone that has a level 4 understanding as someone that has a level 0 understanding, and you can extract the ideas or the concepts the questions that they have, that to me is a master communicator. And that's what I was aiming for. So Inevitable Human, I didn't exactly get there. I think on the NFT Handbook, we're getting close. I think, the fact that we're having this conversation lets me know that it's resonating. Your mind's going, where you have ideas. And, that's what me and Matt set out to do when we wrote the book. It was like, hey, let's make non-fungible tokens easy enough for someone that wants to get involved. They have enough understanding where they can go and do some real damage. And, the cool thing is I can point, if you bought the book on the day it was released and you read it, let's say a week after, and you got started in, like, let's say, I don't want to ruin the book for anybody, but let's say you looked into some of the projects that we picked up, dude, you changed your life a few times over, even if you just got a .eth domain. Like, you were a part of now what just came out yesterday. The Ethereum name service, they just created a DAO, and they just airdropped a bunch of tokens for the holders of the people that have those domains in their wallets. And like, you would have been a part of that. And I know that there's someone out there. I have people that have read the book and told me this story. So I'm not making a hypothetical story. This has actually happened. But there are people that are going and experimenting that don't have the craziest technological experience or backgrounds, but they're participating in a technological revolution that, if we had not done what we did, they would have been left out of. So that's my point. It's like, we can create diversity. We can do a lot of things. But oftentimes when I look at the projects that do that, they look backwards. They're not looking forward. And I think, if you're truly a future thinker, you should be able to do these interventions in real time And so when I asked myself, what is inevitable human? To me, it was the intervention trying to say, hey, the next wealth, the next visionaries, the next ideators, they're going to be thinking about AI in 2015. They're going to be thinking about transhumanism in 2016. They're not thinking about it when it's trendy. Like the people that are really changing our lives on NFTs, they weren't thinking about NFTs in 2021. Dude, they were thinking about NFTs in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. And then when their moment came, they were ready. They were already in momentum, and so the momentum that came through, it just carried their sales, and now they're in new horizons. OpenSea is a great example of that. Super Rare is a great example of that. Both companies that existed for a long time before NFTs, the craze that we now call NFTs, and they were just staying afloat. They were just doing their thing. They were just selling the vision, selling the dream, and then it happens, and now they're some of the biggest companies that will ever that some of the biggest companies or some of the biggest startups that we'll be familiar with today. So I know that was a very long-winded way of like answering that question, but that's how I see it.
It's wonderful, and I love that the passion, but as well the way you go through the details and through the process, because you have the sense of ideas, and like you said, of course, I think the challenge is how we take these concepts. For you and me are natural because we're passionate about this and we all do our research, but the rest of humanity, unfortunately, is drawn on not even knowing how to use Facebook, and that's a bigger challenge. But I want to go back to the book, because I think we'll take a second interview about that, because I'm very interested in what you discuss here. But let's go to your book, and today I think the star should be you in the book. So what I like about the book, and I'll read just a bit of information about the book. So, a practical and non-technical guide to NFTs. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are the ultimate collective, immune to damage or deterioration and impossible to knock off, copy, or pirate. They are soaring in popularity and value. So, and one of the things that you mentioned here, and if I go to the index, is that in the book you help how to create and mint your own NFTs from scratch. You buy existing NFTs on a variety of reputable marketplaces. You can create collections and sell your NFTs by fixed price or auction. Models real-time success with included case studies, and secure and protect your own cryptocurrency wallet to store your NFTs. So this book is written by you, QuHarrison Terry, and as well by Matt Fortnow. That is as well a very high-profile entertainment lawyer turned tech entrepreneur. And this published, of course, by a very important international publishing house, Wiley. So, QuHarrison, can you tell us why you came to the book? And you touched the idea of making it simple, and I think this is really important. So let's go through the book. And for people that are listening to us, please find the book all over the internet. There's a lot of information. QuHarrison has fantastic social media, but please buy the book and read it, because like you just said, QuHarrison, this is not the future, is the present. And the ones that live in the present but understand how the future will be, of course, will have a big future. But well, I'll pass the word to you, because this is your book, and I would like to know more how you put it together. And this have been talking about the way people can democratize and understand NFTs.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So the book came together because me and Matt were having a conversation about NFTs, and I was thinking about just if this was the moment or not, because back in March, after the Beeple sale for 69 million, I was just like, it's cool, but is this really the time where everyone's going to understand and latch on? Because there's a lot of things that happen in tech, me and you both know that, where we observe something big happening and then nothing transforms out of that. Like it just kind of it is what it is. And so I didn't know if NFTs would get the attention that they deserved at that point. I thought it would take more. And quickly, very quickly, I realized that I was incorrect. I was wrong, and I was cool with being wrong. And so me and Matt were talking about the smart contracts essence. So we're having this level 3, level 4 conversation, right? And I'm like, Matt, like no one is understanding this stuff at the same level that me and you do. Like I understand it vaguely because I was working on this stuff back in 2015, but you understand it because you're an attorney. So you have this inherent just knowledge base that's never going to get captured unless there's another attorney that has the exact same experience as you. And not only that experience, but Matt's also a former entrepreneur. Well, I guess not former. I guess I don't know. He's an entrepreneur, right? He's doing his thing because he already exited. He sold his company a while ago. But like, Matt's balling, right? And so he knows the grind, he knows the process. He's an attorney. He knows like all the different inherent parts of that. And so we're having this conversation, and we're talking about IP and provenance, and we're talking about what it means to mint something first, and what's the arbitration process on that, and the copyright and all this nonsense, right? And we're just going, we're riffing, and it gets to like hour 2.5 on our conversation. This is the first one because we had several, but this is the first one, and I'm like, yo, Matt, we should co-author a book. Because he was already writing stuff because he's an attorney. So he's like taking notes. And I think he was already on the way where he was going to create a book. But I was like, yo, I know you're working on a book, or potentially, but like, let's do it together. And we started hustling and just grinding it out. And like, my whole premise was, Matt, you understand the technicalities on the legal side. Smart contracts are still contracts. They just added a little bit of programming to it. That's it. A phone is still a phone, but when you add the smart to it and it becomes a smartphone, you just add a lot more functionality. But at the end of the day, it's still a telecommunications device that allows you to connect with someone on the other end, or like next to you, or on the other end of the world. And so when I was looking at it from that perspective, I was just like, damn, like I wouldn't feel right writing a book without an attorney next to me, just because I didn't go to law school. How am I going to talk about contracts and you don't have that context? And I think Matt really just killed it on that side of the thing. And working with Wiley was great because Wiley was able to help guide us in a way where we could move fast, right? Like we started working on this thing in March, and it's in your hands by October. That means we had to write like several editions of that book back and forth, and we didn't have a lot of time. And we were worried throughout the process, like, because whenever you're putting something together and the industry is literally unfolding, you have to document it in a way where you're like, this shit needs to have value even after we've published it and put it out there. And so there was a lot of things that we either moved or like transitioned or transformed because we knew we couldn't exactly get it. Like and then there was this line we toyed with too, where it's like, you can't make a book that's too visionary where no one gets any substance out of it, right? And so that's why we focused on making a book that if you picked up, you learn what an NFT is, you learn how to collect an NFT, you learn how to buy an NFT, and you learn how to sell an NFT, right? And I thought that, like, with that understanding, the fundamentals, it's almost like an NFT 101. But I don't like calling it a 101 because I know people that have done a lot in NFTs, even myself included, and they still learn things from this book, right? There's things where I'm sure you picked it up and you were like, oh, I never really thought about that. Or this is a different angle, or this is a new perspective. And like, I guess that is possible. So the book, even though it is like aimed at a 101 audience, it's a great primer for people that like are already in the game and just need to figure out a new way to articulate, some of the concepts that they've been doing for a while. So I know I'm the long-winded way of saying it, but that's how the book came to be.
So I have I have a lot of questions that I can imagine, but I'll try to keep it short. So let's start by, I think one thing, of course, you and me can talk for hours about NFTs, and we have quite a lot of passion and as well knowledge. But of course, like you said, we are always learning. And actually, I learned a lot with this book, especially, of course, having a lawyer here was fantastic because there's your part and you feel that there's knowledge as well. So I want to start first by the history of NFTs because you touched that. And of course, I started looking at NFTs in 2016, ironically. I remember when the first CryptoKitties were done and things like that. But it's funny because in 2019, end of 2019, I was in a conference with the director of Whitney Museum, and we were talking about NFTs. And of course, even me, I would never imagine that, okay, 1 year and a half after, this is a $12 billion industry and it's kicking off everything. And at the moment, for people listening to us, the searches for NFTs are bigger than the searches for crypto. which is actually something quite impressive as well. So let's talk about the history of NFTs as the first part, and then I want to go to the second part. This is actually, you have a chapter in the book, it's chapter 4. So if you could summarize, of course, it's a big question, but if you could summarize a bit, because I think it is important for people to look at this.
No, I think one, thank you for reading the book. I think that's I always appreciate when interviewers like come into the game and they like read the book. And when we were writing the history of NFTs, it's one of those things where, or I guess when we were writing chapter 4, the history of NFTs, because for the people that haven't read the book yet, Andy Warhol just kept coming back to me, right? Like I was just like, yo, Andy, and like the artwork that he made, and just, you know, you can go further back. And you know, I'm actually in talks with some people that are doing some research to make a more in-depth timeline, and I'm sure we'll include that when we revise the book at some point. We haven't started that process yet, but I'm already starting to do notes where, you know, this part of the project where I think, you know, we start with Warhol, but I definitely believe that there's work that predates Warhol that you can consider digital art, especially when you start to think about like the VHSs and like, you know, just video, like video as an art, obviously that existed and predates Warhol, but how much of that goes back and forth. So without getting too into the nuances of the weeds there, the history of NFTs is interesting because I didn't really want to say it started in 2016, 15. You wanted to go back and say like, hey, all of the art that is digital, like the museums that existed, the people that have been trying to preach this stuff to the masses for a long time, I wanted to acknowledge them. And so that was the impetus for that chapter. And I think telling the story in a technical book, that chapter really tested it, right? Because you have to tell the story of Warhol, and it has to be fundamentally and factually true. So it's not like a biopic or biography or an autobiography where you get to kind of like write the story or the narrative. No, like when you're working with Wiley, you've got like editors and people who are saying, did this happen like this way? Or did you fact check this? And like, you know, it's a grueling process, but it's good because I think it made that part super sound. So I mean, the history of NFTs, it's still being written, and like there's no way to capture it all. But just to give you a glimpse, I think chapter 4 does that really well.
Completely. And another chapter that I want to talk, and you touched on that, but I think it's really important, is the legal aspects of NFTs. And I want to touch this because, of course, as you know, I'm very involved in NFTs. And for instance, speaking with high-profile artists, and I work personally with people from Depeche Mode, people like Patti Smith, so very big artists. And I'm actually working right now with a couple of Hollywood and Bollywood people. Is that the challenge right now is, okay, when we create an NFT, of course, there's the digital variation, the certification that you put in online in a smart contract. And that in itself is a piece of art and the certification that you can buy, own, and store somewhere and actually resell. But that is as well a lot of parts, and that's what you guys describe about the licensing and all these different things. So I know that is a big question. This can be going for hours, but I want to touch at least top level.
Yeah, top level. Chapter 9, the legal aspects of NFTs. I think if you're just getting involved in NFTs for the first time, obviously I'm not an attorney and this isn't legal advice, but what I'll say is find an attorney, ideally a copyright attorney, right? And try to err on the side of doing as much as you can and documenting, getting permission, figuring out, you know, what the limits and extents of your NFT are, trying to legally describe what the NFT is. So that way, if there is ever a point in time where things become questionable or there's a misunderstanding, you've already done enough on your part, ideally to make that process a little bit easier on both parties. And I think that's where we're at, man. It's so new and there's so many things here that we just don't fully understand. My biggest thing is like, hey, like make sure you keep your attorneys and your accountants right next to you, because those are the most important people in this new world of NFTs and crypto. I mean, like the accounting side too, right? When you think about, you know, how do you do accounting on NFTs? You really want to start to think about these things now, so that way when you've launched your project or when things go as planned or they don't go as planned, you have the right knowledge base, and you have people that you know that are familiar with the project from its start to finish or its start to wherever you're at, familiar and bought in. And I think that like there's it's so new. Like, Dinis, I wish I had a better answer for you. We captured, and Matt really did his thing on chapter 9 when it comes to touching base on some of these concepts. And we talk about artists such as Shlomes, who, like, you know, flips copyright on his head. And, you know, there's so much to cover here. I think this could be a whole interview, and I would really love to have Matt, because I think, you know, I'm the person I'm the entrepreneur, I'm the future thinker, I'm the dude that's like, man, just push forward and do your thing, and like let the attorneys figure it out later. And Matt has really good points where he's like, no, you shouldn't do that, you should do this, this, and this. And so I think, just because I can't do a better job of explaining it, in the nuance, and I haven't spent as much time thinking about it on the legal side as Matt has, I think that's a perfect time for us to bring him in. Whenever we have that.
No, I understand. And I would just look at what you have, because this is very interesting for people listening to us. And I think, so you touch of course, getting the legal is really key. But I want to highlight this because I know that a lot of artists are very confusing. And I'm talking not small ones, even big ones. So if you're a small artist, listen to us, at least some aspirational, don't get nervous, because everyone is in the same, in the end, we are all in the same train. But you have here very interesting things. So are NFT securities? Intellectual property rights, right to publicity, right to privacy, contracts and taxes. We should touch it. So I want to touch then in terms of, so what I think it's particularly interesting is what you have in terms of your area of expertise, QuHarrison. So you have been, of course, creating, minting, involved, of course, with Mark Cuban, that is one of the biggest collectors of NFTs in the world. And actually, he did all the collectives for actually the first ones in the world as well, in terms of basketball, the NBA, and a lot of these things. So there's a lot of things when it comes to NFTs. There's collectives, there's art, there's, well, I'm working property NFTs. There's a lot of things that you can think about it. But can you just touch more in terms of the marketplaces and a bit where people can actually look at this? Of course, there are people that have different level of knowledge, but I think everyone can actually learn a bit, and especially the part of creating and meeting NFTs, like, because that's the good thing about this book, is that you actually did a fantastic work to democratize and simplify how to do it. And I know that is something that I suggest people to read it, and actually read it multiple times. but I think if you can go to the top basis.
Yeah, I'll talk about it like this. Like, why should you care about this stuff? You bring up this great point about democratization. And when I think about what it means to democratize something, it means to create access in a way that a person can understand and have their own thought, right? And not groupthink, not I watched a video and I'm just regurgitating the same things that someone else told me. But you get to a point where you develop an understanding where you can ask yourselves questions that you either say, hey, I agree with this because of X, Y, and Z, or hey, why not this way? Or hey, I don't really agree with that for these reasons. And I think that we don't do enough of that when it comes to democratizing access to, you know, emerging technologies and just different types of media. And so when it comes to NFTs, a lot of people are like, what's an NFT? Then once they understand an NFT, there's a drop off. They're like, okay, I know what NFT is. They've never created an NFT. They've never minted an NFT, or they've never minted an NFT and thus created an NFT. They've never collected. They've never bought. They never purchased. They've never been to a marketplace to go shop. You might have window shopped an NFT, but you never, you know, press buy. You never put a bid in. And why is that? I have an inclination to believe that it's probably due to a lack of insight, right? Like, you know, to your point earlier, reread the chapter, go through it a lot of times. And then there's also this whole concept or premise too. I don't know when this is airing, but you know, I think reading was the right first step. But you know, there's an audiobook that we're going to release, right? And so that's going to allow people that aren't necessarily the best readers or that big on reading, they'll be able to listen. There's a docu-series that we're working on, right? And that's going to come out, and that's going to showcase another thing. And it's all of these things are educational tools that showcase how to do all the things just described. And on the marketplaces side, you have kind of twofold. If you now know how to make these things, you need to learn how to sell and buy, right? And I think marketplaces are great because they have both. They have people that are selling NFTs and they have people that are buying NFTs. And if you know how to like work and utilize the marketplaces to your best advantage, that creates opportunity within itself, right? Like, the people that know how to program an OpenSea smart contract, there's an advantage there. So there's artists like Jessica Ragsy. I talk about her in the book. She literally started making NFTs this summer, just using OpenSea, dropping them, and is literally, you can watch from her first NFT to her current NFT, an artist just kind of develop an understanding by doing. Beeple's the similar way, right? Like Beeple's been doing these every days for almost 14, 15,000 days. That's crazy, right? Every day you're watching someone further develop an understanding. And so I think that there's something said about just giving someone enough information so that they can go get started. And you never know, they might be the next Jessica Ragsy or the next Beeple.
No, and I think you made a very good point, is that I think even me, my YouTube channel where we are here, has been my learning with people like you. And this is about discipline. I'm doing interviews almost every day. And the point is that you spend hours doing very stupid things, everyone. And I think the way we use our time can be done. And I think a lot of these artists that are very successful, and of course, everyone looks at them and you think, okay, no way I'm going to get into this stage. But all of them started somewhere. And I think there's a documentation of almost all these artists. Like I said, people is super diligent. I actually admire him a lot because his capacity of work, it's massive, okay? He delivers there's a new creative piece every day, okay? And there's as well, he explains a lot of these things if you see interviews. Of course, a lot of people that are into this, they really explain and go. And of course, I think your book, the wonderful thing is that it simplifies. So it's kind of it's like you said, it's a guide. Okay, it's a great guide because it goes through the thing. So you can actually go, for instance, I think that is one part that I really like in the book, is that you go through the part of how to create the accounts. Okay, this sometimes people miscalculate this. Even me, that for instance, I lost 1 Bitcoin in the past. Okay, and of course, a Bitcoin now is quite a lot of money. But it's the kind of things that everyone does these mistakes. Okay, even people that are very high-profile people. So I really appreciate that. So I know that we're passing 1 hour. I still have 2 or 3 more questions if you have time, because
Dude, go for it. Let's get it done. Let's get it done.
Fantastic. So I want to talk. And I think making a bridge between the NFTs and the work you're doing as well with Mark Cuban, because Mark Cuban is one of the biggest investors in NFTs and platforms in the world. So one of the chapters you have here is precisely about NFT marketplaces. So you have OpenSea, and this is chapter 5 for people listening to us. So OpenSea, Rarible, Nifty Gateway, Super Rare, Waxatonic Hub, Foundation, NBA Top Shot, Biv, Known Origin, Myth, Market, and Wrap Up, which are the ones you highlighted, which are actually the biggest probably in all the different areas. Of course, there's much more, but these ones in terms of volume are definitely. So when you're looking at your work here as an author, and as well someone that researched this in a very short period, but in the end of the day, you researched in these months that you mentioned, but there was a lot of pre-work done with your expertise in marketing, digital, blockchain, AI, a lot of these things that makes this much easier, and of course explains why you managed to do it so fast, and a lot of discipline as well. But from the experience of working in writing these things, but as well doing marketing for the Mark Cuban Group, that is as well a big collector of NFTs, how do you see the industry growing? And I think this is more an industry question, because of course you are in the epicenter in 2 layers. Okay,
so it's funny. So you asked that, and like I think the last chapter in the book where I talk about the future of NFTs is actually a better place to start for this question. Those marketplaces that exist today, they definitely have shown us what's possible, and they're still working on the nuances between that possibility in tomorrow, right? Like, it's cool to see Super Rare start to think more about traditional art, right, and show what it means to have a traditional artist on their platform. I think it's cool to see OpenSea really get into the economies of smaller NFT projects, right? So you can see a Long Necky Ladies market cap and how the price is changing, because dude, there's very few platforms where you can do that. Like, I mean, because of the blockchain and because of the transparency, instead of trying, like, most people omit transparency. They say, oh, I'm not going to show you my data because it's my data. OpenSea built a place where it's cool to show people your data. It's cool to talk about the floor price. dude, that in itself is unlocking a future where we have yet to even experience the we have yet to experience even the smallest bit of what's possible, because there is a kid right now that's thinking about it. There's a programmer in a garage somewhere that's thinking about it. And there's an executive somewhere that's saying like, hey, I've seen this before. I'm going to change it and do blah, blah, blah. And they're all going to do something different, but they're all walking into this industry because of what they've seen on a marketplace. And so I think that that's cool. But when you ask me, where is the industry going? Or where do I think the industry is going? I think the consensus is, the next step, like I said in the book, is the metaverse, right? And the metaverse is interesting because what is the metaverse? Right. That is the grandiose question that we all are trying to figure out. What is the metaverse? We know what a metaverse is as described by Mark Zuckerberg. We know what a metaverse is as described by Fortnite and Roblox. We know what a metaverse is as described by Ready Player One in the book. And so now we're asking ourselves today, what is a metaverse? And I think NFTs, when you have scarce digital objects or scarce digital files, dude, it just makes it so exciting to know that at some point you'll probably be able to take these files into digital destinations that have value within inherently just because of the community. Like you look at the Decentraland, right? And you're like, oh, okay, Decentraland's cool. Like we're buying virtual real estate. No, it's not virtual real estate. That's an actual destination that people will be hanging out in. And like NFTs are the items. NFTs are the non-fungible tokens that people will be transacting and working around, because you can't right click and press save as, and now you have the same file that I have. You might have a copy of it, but your copy, if you go and try to transact, it's going to be invalidated. And when it's invalidated, guess what? My copy, the original one, the real McCoy, is worth a lot more, because you just arose the awareness of it, right? Like you just brought forth the attention that like, it's the same thing. It's like when someone's rocking a fake watch or fake shoes, they might be okay with that. And there's nothing wrong if they are. But because they are showing that watch or that replica or that shoe to someone else, it raises the profile. People are like, oh, that's what a Rolex looks like, or oh, that's what the Yeezys are. And now people are like, oh, I want to go see. They don't go find the fake one, they go find the real one. And the demand for the real one increases, and thus the price increases, because these are scarce objects, right? We understand this stuff in the real world. So I don't think that it's going to change much in the digital world. It's just the timeline's different. And, I think gaming NFTs, you hear that all the time. Like, yeah, that's a concept. If you want like a fresh perspective from me on like what the future holds, I think we're going to get to a point where Mark Zuckerberg isn't the only person talking about metaverses. I think we're going to see Tim Cook possibly talk about metaverse, right? I think we'll see an Elon Musk talk about a metaverse. I think we all can agree that Tim Cook talking about a metaverse probably looks something like an augmented reality device using some type of Apple hardware. They've got 1 billion plus customers. They can figure it out, right? That's interesting, because when you have 1 billion plus customers and you actually have hardware in the space, what we've learned is you can set standards more easily, right? And it's the same reason why Apple, when they attempted to do the M1 architecture change for the processors, what would have taken a smaller company decades probably to manifest, Apple could do within a few years. And so that's the power of having a built-in network effect and a built-in user base. And so Apple, I think we all agree, that's level one. Level two, I would say, is like Elon Musk. If he were to like go and say, I'm going to do the metaverse, dude, it's going to have a much larger impact than when Mark Zuckerberg said, I'm going to rename my company Meta. This is our metaverse. Because Elon has hardware. He has cars. Those cars have almost computers that are almost as powerful, if not more powerful, than gaming consoles and gaming PCs. And we already know that those in order to play video games at high settings, you need some pretty intensive GPU and graphics power. And I think that Tesla has like 10 teraflops, right? When I'm starting to talk level 3 and level 4, but when you start to think about, okay, they've got millions of Teslas out there. They've got cameras on these vehicles. And that's incredible mapping software. If you told me Tesla said the metaverse is like this transformative Pokemon Go, instead of it being on your phone, but it's your car, and it's all about where you go and the places you'll go and the things you'll experience, and you can take that back and access that on your phone, they already have that. That's already a built-in network. They just need to unlock the like turn it on, like literally turn the key. And so then that becomes a metaverse, right? Because you've got this digital space that the Teslas already live in. And when you look at the marketing material for like the computer vision, I mean, that looks like a metaverse. If you ask me, it's like the maps. It's kind of like one of the backgrounds behind you when you have like the AI just bouncing off things and saying, oh, there's a biker, oh, there's a truck, or oh, there's a semi. And so it's like, dude, just imagine living in that world. And like, you know, what would that look like? And like, how do you get access? And like, I'm talking, and like, these are ideas that I think we will see come to life in the next 9 to 10 years. And none of us really know what it looks like, but what's possible based on what's out there is pretty exciting. And in the ability for NFTs to really make that more of a reality is more true today than it ever has ever been, because you now have, you know, almost 1 million people or 1 million wallets out there that are transacting and trading these NFTs and creating real value, not only for the creators of the NFTs, but also the people that are buying and selling and transacting the NFTs. Like, they're making, you know, real money. And, you know, you can go and exchange Ethereum and get cash. You can go and exchange Bitcoin and get cash. And I think that's the most exciting thing about crypto. So I think to summarize, NFTs, there's so much that can be happened and accomplished, but I think the most obvious use case right now is people are going to try to figure out, you know, how does this fit into a metaverse? And I think what we call a metaverse will change within the next 5 to 6 years.
Yeah, probably will be your next book. Definitely is a big thing.
Hey, you're a smart man. You're a smart man.
No, I'm completely with you, and I think definitely the metaverse. I see the metaverse a lot in the area of the digital twins, because in the end of the day, we're creating digital twins for our health, for everything we're doing, for our cities, for everything. So that definitely this is going to be, of course, the metaverse is much more than just digital twins. It's effectively an entire ecosystem digital that is in diverse the meta. But well, I think we'll take that probably. I definitely want to continue with the more serious. So wrapping up this, and I think we went through 1 hour something. So definitely I suggest everyone, and I'm looking at the book as we speak. I think definitely the book is very concentrated. There's a lot of information here. I suggest please go through this, because I really, one thing that I always tell people is, okay, we have time as much as you, Mark Cuban, me. So it's about the way we use our time, and definitely this is the present that will make our future more prominent, more successful, and so forth. So one of the last questions, QuHarrison. So I know that you're doing a lot of stuff, and like you said, your Twitter account, working during the day with Mark Cuban, and during the night, a futurist and a thinker. So as of course you have the book, and the book is recently launched, so I'm sure you guys going to be a big success. Actually, it's one of the, probably there's not a lot of books, first of all, about NFTs, and this is by far the best I found so far, so congratulations. But in terms of what you guys want to do, and as well you personally, bearing in mind all the things that you have and you're doing, how do you see right now the next stages for the, well, you touched about the future of NFTs, but I would like more in terms of the future of digital relate to the NFTs, because of course you are a digital at heart, you are an innovator and a futurist. So a bit about the future, how do you see all these things? So talk about NFTs and Metaverse, but other areas.
The future of what? What is the question?
I think, how do you see the future present of the time we're living now? I think that would be my last question. The big question. It's a moonshot question.
Yeah, it's a big question. It's a super big question. I think right now, man,
it can be 5 priorities. Let me, I know that is a big one, but I want a big one because everything I read about you is about the future and about these ideas. And we start talking about AI, talk about these things. I just want to see, how do you see this moment that we are right now? Yeah.
So I'd like to think about it like just so everybody can like we could go and talk 10 years. I'd love to, but
Yeah.
let me talk about the next 4. So we've got to figure out the chip shortages. But once we figure out the chip shortages, I think a lot of people are underprepared for how fast technology is going to change. Like we're already getting a taste of it. If you look at the Apple M1, is it the Max processor that just came out? Look at how fast and powerful and power efficient that chip is. Mind blowing. But what we haven't realized is that the scientists have kept working. The supply side is what's not figured out, right? Like the logistics, like getting stuff from point A to point B, that's what's not figured out just yet. But the innovations is happening. And so we've never really had a time that I can remember in technology where there was a lag between getting people the devices in their hands. So in the next 4 years, once we figure out the chip shortage and just how things unfold there, we're gonna have this point where like we're gonna redefine what fast is. We haven't reached it yet, but like, you know, these just the devices that we use, you're not going to want to use a device from 2018. You're not going to want to use a device from 2020 because when you get to 2024 and you pick up the device, it's going to be night and day. It's kind of like if I gave you an iPhone 10 and I gave you an Android like G1, like the first Android device. I mean, they're both very capable devices, right? Like one's going to be inherently slower than the other. That's probably going to be the juxtaposition. It's going to be like, wow, like what are we going to do? We're already seeing it with certain devices. I think Apple's ahead of the curve here. I think they've also been ahead of the curve on supply chain, so this makes sense. But like their M1 processor, still mind blowing. I mean, they have the M1 also in the iPad Pro series, which is crazy because you've got this like desktop class CPU in an iPad, and like it works. It doesn't overheat. It doesn't overpower. So I think processing and just the speed of technology is going to change, and that's going to change how we interact. That's going to make a lot of things that were once not possible realities because we have that infrastructure, we have that hardware out there, and you know, from a price standpoint, it won't be too. It'll be affordable, or it'll be obtainable is probably a better word. And so then the second thing I think that's going to be super interesting is the whole construct of augmented reality. I think within the next 4 years, we're gonna dial into a better place. I think if the past teaches us anything, I think we all loved Clubhouse, but we all hated Clubhouse. What was interesting about it is Clubhouse did a lot more for tech than I think anyone wants to give it credit, but it made us rethink about audio communication. You have Twitter Spaces now that has taken it a certain direction. I don't think that narrative is over. I think, you know, the way we communicate via audio is going to change. We're seeing fragments of that from Clubhouse to Twitter Spaces to the Google Pixel 6, the 6 Pro. One of the more exciting features and functionalities of that device, actually, which correlates to my first point, and I didn't even, and not even intendedly, but this actually makes sense if you follow it, is the thing that's most exciting about the Google the Google Pixel Pro 6P or whatever it's called, is they have a tensor chip in it. They have like their own Google silicone chip that they put in there. And the chip is so powerful that they can do on-device speech recognition that also transforms the speech, it formats the speech. So it capitalizes, it makes the correct names, it puts the right punctuation and all that stuff in there. And it's like a text-to-speech engine that we've just never really seen before. It's like, it's almost magical the way it works. We are going to see how we communicate via audio like get flipped upside down in the next 4 years, right? And I think that, you know, if there's any opportunity, and all, like I would revisit it. And like we know that there's big money to be made there. If you look at the Clubhouse valuation, you look at even before Clubhouse, you remember the company, I think it was called, they made that Dragon software. I think it was called Nuance or something. They made it's used a lot for doctors, and like they transcribe their medical notes with it. But I mean, a very, very big company, right? When you start to think about it, like audio is something where if we then go forward, Apple has some new standards where their spatial software that they're using in their computers, their Macs, their AirPods is it's kind of interesting, because if you ask me, why is nobody building AR experiences for that? Right? Like if you could just put in, like, we already know the power of storytelling and surround sound. Like if you go to a movie theater, IMAX movie theater, you've got all this surround sound, all this, and that's all. That's like, if you just close your eyes, you can hear, you can feel the footsteps, you can hear what's going on. That's a form of storytelling. So I think audio has been underlooked for so long that we're going to see we're going to revisit the whole concept of audio. And I think all the tech companies know this. Like you see Amazon, they're working on some stuff in the audio space. Facebook's working on some stuff in the audio space. When you have that many minds thinking about something, things change. So that would be my second point. My third point probably is going to be centered around what it means. Like we have two trends, and I'm not finished. Like you're getting a raw. Like this is me like thinking about the future. So this is raw. It's not polished. But there's a trend that I'm seeing here that I don't fully understand. But we're in a time where you have incredible wealth being generated and debt being relinquished because of that. And you have also a time where people are still struggling to get by. So you have incredible debt being created. It's about which story you want to pick. Like both narratives are true. It's not, and it's true at very extreme possibilities, right? Like if you look at the stuff that's happening in crypto, you have people, to your point, losing a Bitcoin today, that's about $60,000, right? Let's say you sold an NFT and you got one Bitcoin just to make it easy, right? You know, you made just $60,000. There was a Guardian article the other day where there was a guy that says, I was struggling and begging people to pay my rent yesterday. Today, I've made millions of dollars because of NFTs. That was the Guardian article, right? And I look at it and I'm like, dude, that's the numbers are the numbers, they fluctuate, but still you have life-changing money just changing hands at the top. But COVID was really hard on people. And you have people still living on credit cards. You have people that still haven't figured out the remote job situation. You have people that still haven't figured out what they haven't bounced back. A lot of people died, and it quite inevitably, it takes time to restart. And so those people aren't participating in NFTs. They're not, doing some of these crazy stock bets and all that stuff. What they're doing is they're just trying to stabilize themselves so they can get back into society. And in some cases, the cost for that is literally like debt, like they're accruing debt. And so there's something there, right? Like I think that, like I said, this is fresh, but that's something that as a future thinker, you should be saying, where are we right now? Where are we going? There's going to be a lot of narratives that are true because of what's happening right now. And then my last point is a big one. And this is probably bigger than all the 3 points combined. But because of COVID and because of the mass reset, we now have a point where we've reached globalization. You can now be in Romania and you have just as much as an equal opportunity to get a gig in the US or in Mexico than never before. And it's vice versa is true. The only barrier is language. And you're starting to see these super teams form where they speak multiple languages very well, very strongly, and they're able to muscle themselves into deals that wouldn't be beforehand. People are okay with, VPNs. People are okay with remote work. People are okay with trying to figure out ways to do it. We were forced to do it, and the skill sets and the strength that we have because of it, it means that even in some of the agencies that I work with, dude, we've got more people overseas than we do in the US. And the work product hasn't gotten worse. It's gotten better. It's gotten more streamlined, more efficient. Costs went down. I'm not the only company that's happened to. And the biggest barrier, the biggest challenge is just finding project managers that speak different languages. And I think that there's this new, it's funny because I kind of go back to the audio point that I made. There's this new beginning around connectedness and what it means to be able to communicate in not only your native language, but also a secondary language. And we've always known that to be true, but I think that the timing is now for that. If you speak more than one language right now, and both are pretty efficient, there's a lot more money for you to be made than I think beforehand. And you don't really have to get on a plane anymore to go get that. You just literally need to meet the right people, either digitally or submit and pitch. And like in doing that, you can build a lifestyle that is truly decentralized. Like, you can be working on a project when you're sleeping because you've got a team overseas working on it. And the standards at which they do that are really, really well defined. And the risk, I mean, it's still there in some capacities. Like, you're not going to have a lot of top secret sensitive information, but some of the stuff, such as if you were editing this podcast, it doesn't need to be done by someone on your team anymore. And if there's enough people freelancing where the quality of work has risen to a point where it's acceptable. And then there's also tools that help, because of the pandemic, that help streamline that workflow so much. Look at Zoom. Zoom has grown tremendously as a tool. Still not my favorite piece of technology, but the fact that you can do so much through this tool probably wouldn't be possible just 2-3 years ago. So those are my four. Like, I think that those are areas that if I were a future thinker and I was wondering, like, what's on Q's brain, or like, what are some of the concepts that you think are big things are going to arise from? Those are those areas. And, it's a really great question because I intuitively do it, but no one really asked me that. So thank you for that.
I think these 4 questions are 4 podcasts, and really, I like specifically the way you put the 4, because you touch one is the exponential growth of technology and the capacity of scaling technology and power of technology, but as well the challenge that's coming with that, because the technology is going faster than the rest of society because supply chain and reality are not so fast. And the second one, of course, related with I like especially the idea, mostly you touch about financial inclusion and how to use these tools to include people more in society and use it. And I think the last part as well, which is actually part why I created this podcast, is the idea that, and this is kind of probably my last, summarizing this fantastic interview is more in the sense that at the moment we have so much possibilities with these tools that we're talking. NFTs can really make money for people listening to us. If you read, I would say that people reading your book, if you get it right, if you read this, you can learn how to make more money for you. I'm sorry, of course you have to, and I'm not talking about, you don't need millions of dollars, you need even start with $50 or $10, which you probably spend any time in things that are not even so important. So I think this kind of things is the way you as well use the education. And that's what you're talking, because the challenge we have is that there's an inclusion and the exclusion of digital, and the digital exclusion, which you touch as well, or you touch on the book, and as well the way you look at these things. That's for me the biggest challenge, because of course then people try to blame other people if things go wrong, instead of looking at what we have in our hands. And I love your positivity as well towards this. So of course I have a lot of more stuff, but we are in 1 hour now. So QuHarrison has been a huge privilege, and I'm really very excited. We're going to put all this information for people listening to us. So please buy the book, or at least find information. There's a website, NFT. It's the NFT Handbook, How to Create, Sell, and Buy Non-Fungible Tokens, from Wiley, which is global, one of the biggest global publishing houses, by, of course, Matt Fortnow and QuHarrison Terry, which I have the privilege to speak today. And of course, there's a lot of information, so just go for the social media accounts of QuHarrison and find as well. Any last notes for people listening to us, QuHarrison?
Man, thank you for having me. It's been a fun interview. I'm happy to do this anytime, because you really do your research. You read the book, you checked out some of the stuff that I put out there in the past, and all those things mean something. So thank you for that.
No, it's been my privilege, and I really appreciate as well your time and as well all the wealth of knowledge that you share with us today. Thank you so much. I wish you all the best over there, and I'm sure you're going to come back soon. Thank you so much.
Sure. Take care.